Now let's welcome in NBC horse racing analyst Randy Moss. He was also at the race. Randy, how did you feel about the result of the disqualification yesterday?
Initially, when we first saw the replays on NBC, the first replays we were given, you could see that there was interference, and I actually saw it live, and I was kind of expecting there to be an inquiry or a foul claim or whatever. And those initial replays that we saw, to me, it didn't look like at that time that the interference rose to the level that the horse should be disqualified. And then when we got more and more replays to look at, especially the replays where you could see War of Will's front legs going between the hind legs of Maximum Security, and you realized how very close we came to having a catastrophe on the racetrack at the Derby, with War of Will down and his jockey Tyler Gaffleone down and probably other horses going over them and falling. At that point, your viewpoint kind of changes on it. And I think that's ultimately what the stewards were looking at. And I've got a lot of friends who disagree. I cut my teeth in this business as a handicapper. And the last thing a handicapper wants to see is a horse like Maximum Security, who was clearly the best horse in the race, disqualified when the horses he bothered, in almost any subjective opinion, had no chance to win. And oh, by the way, a horse in Country House put up as the winner who had a beautiful trip and really wasn't bothered at all. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the severity of the problem that Maximum Security caused and what could have happened, I think if you didn't disqualify the horse, you're sending a message to the jockeys out there, hey, if you're on the favorite in the Kentucky Derby, anything goes, and you just can't do that, especially with the renewed interest now after what's gone on in California the last few months about horse safety.
Okay, so all the more reason they want to impose the rule of law as it applies to horse racing. So let me ask you this. I think people, we were talking a little bit with Todd Pletcher about the outside looking in. People on the outside looking in, they look at this and they think about ticky-tack fouls in sports, right? Those kind of fouls where you say, okay, maybe that's a foul, but that shouldn't determine the result. You talked about this rising to the level. What is that level where it crossed for you and said, this is not some ticky-tack foul, this is something more? What's that level for fans who can't quite understand that?
Well, normally when the stewards look at anything like this, all right, in your normal everyday race all the way up to a race like the Kentucky Derby, they look at two things. Number one, and this is not necessarily in order of significance, but number one, did it impact the outcome of the race? Okay, in this case, the answer to that would almost certainly be a clear-cut, absolute no. It did not affect the outcome of the race. War of Will had a chance after that, and he backed up in the last 16th of a mile. And the other horse that was interfered with, Long Range Toddy, was already going into reverse when he got bothered. Maximum Security was going to win anyway, right? The second question, how severe was the interference? And I think that was the tipping point. Mm-hmm. And that's why I can't really fault what the stewards did. Even though I hate as much as the next guy to see a horse that deserved to win in Maximum Security because he was the best horse disqualified. When you think about what could have happened, I mean, this could have been the worst catastrophe in Kentucky Derby history. We could have had horse deaths. We could have had jockey injuries and maybe even jockey deaths. I don't want to sound melodramatic, but it was essentially what happened. It was a coin flip as far as whether War of Will went down or stayed up. If the horse wasn't as athletic as he is and twisted his entire body off to the side to try to avoid Maximum Security's hind legs, it could have been a really, really bad scene. Well, and you just can't allow that to happen. It would be like NFL officials telling players in the last 2 minutes of the Super Bowl, we're going to throw our flags away and we're not going to call anything. I mean, you've got to have some policing out there.
All right, Randy Moss, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.